All right, talk to me. Go, go, go.
All
go,
right.
go, gadget. Sorry.
Are we ready to go, guys?
Please,
Let's do this.
I don't care at all. I'm thrilled to just sit for a minute.
I need a couple of these
Yes,
later.
you do.
Hi, my name is Peter Koplowski. I'm the Midnight Madness curator with the Toronto International Film Festival, and I am here, and I am so excited because I'm trick-or-treating with Jamie Lee Curtis and Judy Greer, Andi Matichak, and David Gordon Green of the new Halloween. Guys, can I just thank you so much for this movie? As a horror fan, I saw the film, I'm so excited. It's so good.
No, we're just going to all give it to you, David Gordon Green. You just eat it. Here,
I need the
have
moment.
some candy, baby.
I need a moment, yeah.
Jamie, you've returned to Laurie Strode so many times, but you know, what keeps you coming back to that character? I'm sure you hear that question a lot.
Well, the truth of the matter is it's not so many times. The first time was when Halloween 2 came up, and it was a direct sequel. Mm-hmm. The movie started exactly the moment the first movie left off. I didn't make another horror film after that for a long, long time. H2O was because it was 20 years and I thought it was cool, and I went to John and Deborah and said, we're still in show business. Let's make a movie.
And I remember when you were doing H2O, you were interested about the idea that what would it be like for a character who had survived an event like 1979.
Yes, but in that example, Laurie Strode was running. She was running for her life. She had changed her identity. She had moved away. She didn't have the name Laurie Strode anymore, and she was running as fast as she could. And it was that movie was a lot about alcoholism and about running from your fear. Ultimately, I had no intention of ever pretending to be Laurie Strode again, and with no malice except great respect for her, until last June when a phone call came in from someone through another friend of mine, and he said this is what he's doing, and he started to explain it to me, and I said, no, just send it to me. I'll read it, and if I like it, I'll say yes, and if I don't like it, I'll say no. That's how quick, you know, and I think I called him the next day and said yes.
And what did you like about it? Like, what was...
I liked this.
Yes.
I liked this. I liked that it was a movie about trauma, and I liked that it explored it through generations.
Yeah.
And it just so happens that we're at a time in the universe where women are confronting the trauma of their lives and quite frankly, the perpetrator of that trauma, and saying no more. I'm going to take back the narrative of my life. And so the combination of that and the fact that they were talking about it through the lens of 3 generations, mother passing that trauma and fear and anxiety onto her daughter, and then passing it on to her granddaughter.
In many ways, it really does seem like taking that trope that had begun with Halloween and evolving it and taking it past where...
You just said the T word, you have to eat something. Here, you said trope, that means you have to eat chocolate.
No, but was that, David, were you thinking about that when you wrote the script, the legacy of the T word, the final girl, and the idea of maybe dealing with that as a concept and moving past just the idea of surviving a night, but what happens after?
In hindsight, yes. At the moment, like, Danny McBride, Jeff Radley, and myself, the writers, and the moment when we decided to come up with what our approach would be, it was like, as horror movie fans, as movie geeks, as writers and creative entities, what do we want to see? Let's have fun. Let's come up with something that would take the essence of the 1978 film, which we have such admiration for, and what can we do with that it pays honor to Carpenter, Laurie Strode, Michael Myers, this universe that we have so much affection for, and can bring it to the fan base of that audience with great appreciation for what we appreciate, knowing we're part of that fan base, and then a new generation to introduce these characters to in an exciting way.
And I also noticed that even though you wipe the continuity, and we're starting right after Halloween 1, 40 years later, but the other Halloweens don't really factor into it, you play a lot of tribute to those other films. And I was just wondering, was that important as well to like pay tribute to Halloween 3 and even Halloween 2?
I think so, to have kind of playful nods to it, so that you get into the specifics of what you're trying to do. There's no way to appease the entire fan base because everyone has a favorite moment or a favorite movie, or there's so many things that are important to all of our nostalgic diet for the way that we have interpreted Halloween and how Halloween is played in our lives. So I don't want to judge anybody of that. I had a very specific idea that we chose to take a specific direction, but wanted to make sure that we're honoring, saluting the other movies as well, because it's all different writers, different directors, different storytellers doing what they would want to do, what they think would be fun and cool. And so I don't want to say, hey, you guys don't exist. I want to say we were there the whole way through with every one of you.
And you don't exist.
By the way, just sit this one out.
It's our turn.
Yeah.
Andi and Judy, were you familiar with the legacy of the Halloween films? Did you watch them?
Oh, yeah. yeah, of course. Yeah, and that's the face, the mask, like popping into a window has haunted me.
What is it about what is it about Myers as
What is it about that? Why, as an adult, before I even knew that this was ever going to happen, was I always still expecting to see that face outside of the dining room window, like for my whole life? I'll die feeling that way.
I feel like it's so scary because it's just so random. Mm-hmm. Like in the original, which is what we're going from. Every act was just random. He just followed her because who knows, you know? And that was what terrified me, because it's not like there's a reason that he's coming after anybody. It's just, oh, it could be you.
And I think that's what's fascinating about Michael Myers, and it's really interesting as a writer trying to come up with because he doesn't give you anything. He doesn't express himself. The mask is nothing. It's nothing to respond to. It's not expressive. It's not a clown. It's not a demon. It's just
he's not yelling even when he does it. Like he's not like,
he doesn't, you know, he's not out seeking vengeance. He doesn't have a motive. He's not emotional. He's not expressive.
He's a monster.
It's like the least writing you can do. Because there's nowhere to go with him, which makes it kind of challenging because it's not like the face-off he will have with a potential victim. You know, it's not Hannibal Lecter playing mind games with Clarice Starling. It's something almost more vacant than that, and that's, to me, what scares me, is that it's not somebody that's mad at you or...
There's no reason.
There's no reason for it. It's a random, neutral nothing.
See, this is also a Blumhouse production. One thing I've always, you know, in the legacy of the Halloween films is also the economy in which they made that movie. It was a low-budget movie, and a lot of that low budget dictated how they made the movie. The Panaglide shots, the very simple score. Blumhouse is also a company that believes that to make a horror movie, you don't need a supersized budget, and you probably shouldn't have a supersized budget.
Do you pay anyone a lot of money?
I'm glad you said it.
But do you think that philosophy does lend itself to horror, and did it actually help in the recreation of the sort of aesthetic feeling of the original film?
Well, I think it applies to every type of movie. Yeah, and I'm someone that doesn't need movie star appeal to draw me to the. I need a good movie.
You have a movie star.
I don't need a high concept. I don't need, you know, I just need something to be made well, crafted well, and recommended to me, or it sounds intriguing, and you know, I'm an adventurous audience member. But it's a smart business model. Take some risks. For a low budget movie, you don't have a lot of people looking over your shoulder in the immediate creative sense. On this particular project, we had a universe of people looking over our shoulder waiting to see what we make, but it wasn't like someone was challenging our process. They were supporting our process, and Blumhouse has a great staff of executives that are extremely knowledgeable about horror films. They care about what we're making, and you know, and ideas were welcome. It's a very collaborative group of people, from John Carpenter to Jason Blum to the entire cast.
I know, but I'm going to go back to you for a minute, because the truth of the matter is, there would be other directors who would not want their input, not welcome the kind of creative soup that you created for actors. I mean, very inventive filmmaker. I mean, really often just throw all the words out. I don't care about any of them. Say gibberish. I mean, it really just...
You had a lot of freedom to play.
Totally freedom. And that's, to be honest, that's what Jake Gyllenhaal said to me when he called me to say that David wanted to speak to me. He said, I have never had a better time creatively. And I certainly can attest to that. It was incredible. So incredible that I literally went home and wrote a movie, thinking, okay, if this is how you make movies, I'm in. Like, this is fun. This was fun.
I just would like to say one thing to your point that...
Go on, lady.
Well, that you're making a genre film and it's supposed to be scary and everyone's excited about it. But one of the great things about working for David was that it was really, I always felt it was all about the characters and it was all about like our story. I never felt like we were sacrificing character for plot and for scare. And that was what I keep sometimes forgetting this is a horror film because I feel like we were telling a story of relationships.
Well, and by the way, if you look at the original movie,
Yeah.
it's a movie about Laurie Strode and her dreaminess and her friends and all of those relationships. I agree with you 100%.
And so
There's so much humor to it too, like as well. Like
Ours?
Yeah, it's not a horror
I wouldn't
comedy.
know, I haven't seen it.
But there's a lot of humor to it as well, and I've always felt that the structure to a joke and a scare are very much the same. And you know, just because something's scary doesn't have to be totally severe. That there can be life and there can be personality to it, and it's very clear in the film. And it's awesome to hear that David afforded this opportunity to play and to inject that.
I think I've been ruined for like every future job. Like I peaked. Thanks, David.
For Jamie, did it feel like a flashback to 1978 when you were there?
Sure. I mean, it felt that way mostly because of the way David works. David surrounds himself with his geek friends from, and I say that
Some
with,
say.
well, true, but you know, film geek friends who make movies together. I mean, that's how David works. That's how John worked. Tommy Wallace and Nick Castle, the guy who played the Shape and the art director of the movie, were film school fans. Dean Cundy, I think, also. I mean, they're all. It very much resembled that movie. City streets, small town, babysitters. It removed, you know, as you've said, all these other movies and just went back to this basic storytelling. And just to add one thing from what you were all saying, you know, terrorism is random. It's soft targets. That's the whole idea. It's like you don't expect it. I think the fact that you don't expect this, that you have no idea, there is no rhyme, reason, anything, is what makes it terrifying. There's no vendetta, there is no ulterior motive. It is just pure evil, which is what Donald Pleasance says in the original movie, and really is what John and Deborah as writers came up with, which is that simple, pure evil that therefore has no rhyme or reason is the most terrifying thing you could ever imagine.
And what I was so impressed with this movie is that in the face of that meaning, that no reason, that meaninglessness to this violence, your characters decide we're going to stop and confront this this oppressing force, whether they do or not. See the movie.
Yeah.
But how, David, in writing the screenplay, you know, when did that moment come together on the page in terms of how you're going to get all these, as you said, cross-generation of women to come together to prop each other up so that they can collectively take on Michael?
We just started kind of organically with scene one, thinking about where we'd begin and where we'd go and who's who and how this relates. And then I remember after we finished the second act, we switched who was doing what a little bit and moved it around and played a little this and that. And you know, there's some characters that reveal things about themselves, and we switched who would do that and how that would. And then you know, with the beauty of having three writers, it was kind of a creative writer's room. Jeff would take a spin at a scene, then Danny would add on to that, and then I'd reinvent that, and then they'd rewrite my work, and so it became that. And then we spent a lot of time on the first two acts, and then went in very focused and specific as to how we would.
And was John involved at all? Was John on set?
He was. He would be. I'd call him. You know, he'd give ideas, particularly in the opening, the introduction, and the conclusion of the movie. Those were two big points. And then I'd ask him questions like, "But how do we get him back in the mechanic suit?" And he'd say, "You're on your own, kid."
Well, I suppose Andi and Judy, like Jamie spoke about that detail, but was that something that also really struck out at you in the screenplay as something that made the role interesting to you?
I would have to say that once I got to start work, like once I got to South Carolina and we started rehearsals and we were all in that same room in your office together rehearsing, was when I was like, oh my God. Like I was reading it really like I read everything. Like, what does my character do? What does my character do? and then it started to occur to me when we began rehearsals. Personally, I was like, this is so cool. This is so cool that there's 3 generations of Strode women.
Yeah. I mean, I kind of had like the reverse effect of that because I read it and I was just immediately raptured by the 3-generational story. I didn't know who was cast yet. Obviously, I was hoping that you were signed on, but I didn't know when I read it. So then it wasn't until like once I got to set and was rehearsing, I was like, oh God. Oh God.
Well, I will say this. You know, it's a movie about trauma. And trauma is a generational illness. And we know this, obviously, from the Holocaust, and we've seen what happened to generations after that trauma. In this story, we're talking about a trauma that occurred in 1978 to Laurie Strode, who probably went back to high school 2 days after the incident. And no one ever talked about it. And then, of course, all of that anxiety and trauma was put into her daughter. And then all of that attempt to not have that anxiety got put into her daughter. And it's a story, it's a family trauma story. And again, without planning it, women taking back the narrative of their lives, which we are seeing seems to be a thing today. You know?
Yeah.
It may actually be a thing. Who knew? Wonder Women. Hello, women.
Oh, I get it.
Hello, women.
Oh, now I get it.
Hello, women.
A little bit longer.
Yeah, no, but it's all good. Hello, women.
That's actually really brilliant.
Thank you.
All right, thank you so much.